Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Power 365 show on the Business Application Podcast. Sorry about my voice, I'm a little broken at the moment. I'm pleased to introduce Purvin Patel from Microsoft as our first guest on the show. Purvin is a 23-year veteran in the CRM world, working with industrial, medical, and food service companies. He was part of the first group to evaluate Microsoft Dynamics CRM 1.0, and in 2005, he joined the Microsoft IT R&D team, bringing a rebel agile style, and worked on creating Microsoft's first cloud offering on Dynamics CRM 4.0. Purvin joined the Dynamics product team in 2015 as part of the engineering release team, overseeing our previews and MVP engagements. Recently, he's taken a role with Business Application Group within Microsoft as the Dynamics Influencers leader, working on making the community vibrant. Purvin is a father of 3 youngsters, 2 dogs, and a cat. Now, let's get into the show. Purvin, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Mark?
Hey, good to have you on the show, Purvin. I've been really wanting to do this for a while, and it's great to actually launch a new podcast show, Power 365, with kind of your experience and your knowledge around, the communities, how Flow, PowerApps, and Power BI all feed into the Power Platform, and really what's available resource-wise for the community out there. But before we get to that, can you kind of give us a bit of background of your past 7 years in Microsoft? What do you do? What's your role? And kind of what does your day-to-day look like?
I've had a very interesting career here at Microsoft. I was part of the original crew, if you wanted to go back before 7 years, that evaluated CRM 1.0. Of course, it was a very raw product back then and very limited to what you could do. But from that point on, I've been circling around Dynamics and CRM applications for close to 20 years. So for the last 7 years, I've been at Microsoft and been focused around how to grow Dynamics CRM from 4.0 to what it is now. And that's also doing internal implementations, whether it's HR, our various HR support systems, as well as other solutions that I've created internally.
Okay, wow. I bet you've actually been hands-on implementing Dynamics as part of your role.
Yes, I would say even my new role or my current role is more of me giving back to the community. I've been doing so many implementations over the years that I wanted to make sure that there was a way for the community to kind of A, learn some of the things that I've learned, but B, to start growing the community beyond where it's been in the infant form.
Yeah. So in the last 2 years, we've seen a significant developments happen with Dynamics. There was the platform separation, and I'd like you to talk a bit about that in a moment. But PowerApps have come out, Flow have come out. What do you see as the driving force behind this massive, change that we're seeing?
I think it's us coming out of our cocoon, to be honest. And if we were to kind of describe it that way, the old world, as I call it, of Dynamics has always existed in a black box. So everything within that box, that's where your playground is. That's where you can do your customizations, your development, but you could never leave that box. And the Power Platform, its integration into our world actually allows us to move outside of that box and actually take away the entire barriers while still keeping the barrier within the Dynamics world. So I think that's the big driving change behind what we have now with the Power Platform is we've been limiting ourselves for a very, very long time, and that's affected how we've developed our product and our capabilities. And it was really necessary for us to be able to inject power into the Dynamics platform to not only make it much more scale, but a lot more user-friendly. We can now directly impact who I call the citizen developer. Before, you're always a dev person that knows code, or you've known CRM enough to let it do the things you want it to do, but it required a bit of effort. With the citizen developer persona, we want to capitalize on people's natural ability to understand technology and then be able to apply that directly to the Dynamics world.
Okay. So tell me a bit about what happened over the last 2 years with what's called the separation of the platform to the first-party apps. What's your view on what happened there?
That was a necessary piece, and to kind of give the backstory to this has been something that's been in the works and somewhat promised but undelivered or unshown is XRM. Back in the CRM 4.0 days, everyone became extremely excited because the ability to customize Dynamics to an actual application that's more concentric for a specific use case was the focus. When 2011, 2013, 15, 17, people started building more and more app-centric type solutions, whether it might be like a healthcare solution or whatever the case may be, within Dynamics. However, where that has been hindered is just because of the way that we've implemented everything. Now that we have the ability for this app-plat separation, this allows us to now start really allowing people to start creating their own true applications without encumbering the normal pieces of what you would see as we call CRM or Dynamics. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people will greatly appreciate, is not having to worry about some of the other pieces like sales. For example, when you log into your instance, obviously you want your users to be able to hone in on exactly what they should be doing in an app scenario and not see things like sales, marketing, service, the core pieces, the foundations of what used to be CRM.
Yeah, so you're saying that, so as part of that process, the platform as such was separated from, are you calling them first-party apps, the things like sales, service, field service? Is that what how you're calling them?
I actually dropped the moniker first-party, mainly just because I've looked at Dynamics as more of a app scenario. Now, obviously, our core bread and butter has been always the sales, service, and marketing modules that came with that. But for me, just my own take on it is, it's an app world, and we had to separate our platform from our apps in order to be scalable and distributable.
So, what's been the most significant change, in your opinion, within Dynamics in the last 2 years?
Well, I mean, obviously we can talk ad nauseum as to the whole Power Platform involvement. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming, especially just the way that things had been progressing with various leaders. It has always been that black box, but that 2-year change that James Phillips has brought with the Power Platform being the main focus of what our platform direction, and also with Charles Lamanna, I think that's the big change that a lot of people are still trying to understand. How does that really work, and how does that affect them? For most people, the Power Platform has been somewhat invisible to them. I mean, if you were talking to the average user and you told them, do you know what CDS means? I would actually be shocked if I would even say, 1 out of 2 people could correctly identify that. And then that's actually where my world really starts, is I'm here about evangelism of that platform.
Right. So just let me get my understanding of this right. So we're saying, what we've traditionally known as Dynamics is really a range of apps sitting on top of the Power Platform. And then what that really allows me, let's say I'm an ISV, I can actually go out and build apps with pretty much the same type of level of sophistication and functionality that something like Dynamics for sales or Dynamics for marketing have had in the past. I could actually build an app with almost that same level of sophistication on top of this platform now.
Absolutely. You can use all of the general capabilities that you would expect from the Dynamics platform, whether it might be the customer engagement side or the finance and operations side or any of the other apps, and you can actually start building your own app. And one of the first ones that we've launched out of that is one of our healthcare accelerators. It isn't anything that I would say that is absolutely polished, but it allows you to work within our platform now and build your own solution without having to encumber all the other pieces.
Right. So you can basically start off with what's known as core and then build up from that point onwards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So how's this affected the development of Power Apps and Flow? Like how much are they now becoming more, a central focus like Flow for business process, and if you say, let's say, any type of workflow or business automation, and then Power Apps for, from, the 2 points, Canvas, and then what we've traditionally always had, the model-driven apps. How has this affected, what we're seeing now with the Power Platform and these various apps?
I would say you won't see a lot of aesthetic changes to those applications and within those services. What you are seeing is how we're making it available across the entire board. And before, I would even be shocked to say, or a lot of people, everyone kind of looked at those as kind of garage-type apps, things that you would stitch together, and now they're directly available within Dynamics. And I think that's the biggest change that you're starting to see. And we're still making a significant progress of how we make those available within Dynamics. But with this October release for 2018, you're going to also start seeing Canvas-driven apps on a model-driven form. And when I say it that way, a lot of people kind of look at it and go, I'm not sure what you're driving at, but the model-driven form is the Dynamics platform. It's always been the bread and butter. And the Canvas apps, obviously, the power side. And to be able to take the Canvas app and actually drop it onto a Dynamics form, when you say that to any Dynamics person or anyone with the history, you kind of get this amazing look on their face like, oh, wow, that's the first time that we've been able to create not only interesting objects, but being able to interact within that form-driven layout and be able to show information right there and then and be able to tweak it. Before, there was all sorts of things that you would have to do back in the day, write code, scripting, use business rules to be able to show and present information on a form. Now, it's available, and you could drop it in, and you can even do this within your phone to begin with, and then have it to show up on your model-driven on your forms. So a lot of these things have made significant changes, and I would venture to say a lot of people are still just on the cusp of what we can do with the new platform.
So that's interesting because a lot of people just getting into Microsoft Business apps at the moment. It's they're kicking off their career. They've, for whatever reason, that landed. They're seeing it and they're going, heck, Dynamics has been around for 15 years. Am I too late? What's your kind of message to those people just entering the ecosystem now? To what are the possibilities career-wise? If they really embrace the Microsoft Power Platform and what's possible with it.
I think it kind of started with the Power Platform as this youth factor. I wouldn't say so far as that the youth have strayed away from coding or machine language. However, we wanted to start attracting a new base, as I mentioned before, the citizen developer. And that started off as with a lot of people that are, I would just say, young. But we're starting to see that ability for us to be able to inject a lot of new blood into our world is bringing that focus of the citizen developer into the developer world of our platform that existed before. And that's, I think, the first thing that I've noticed is there's been a lot of exchanging of new and old world ideas, and we're starting to see this meshing starting to really happen. So
what's the opportunity for consultants out there to actually, let's say they don't even have experience in the former apps, like sales and stuff. What's the opportunity for them to, they might be working in their business, they might see business problems all over the place, and they're like, hey, I don't know how to code. How can they kind of get up and get cracking and start using the Power Platform to start solving problems in their own businesses?
I think where Dynamics has always been challenged is the average user has never had the ability to inject their thoughts in a technical manner into a platform or an application. And now we're starting to see this ability for someone to simply start from either a no-code or a low-code scenario, and they could do it themselves. And I think that's brought up a lot of interesting and unique ideas that moves away from the traditional sales scenario or marketing scenario or even service scenario. I think a lot of people are starting to put in their own process, and I think that's where our greatest flexibility and our ability comes in, is now we can absorb any branded solution, vertical solution, or even garage thought of how, a certain scenario needs to be done. As I've always said, when you're a consultant in the Dynamics world, you hear 50 million ways of how you can sell a product. However, everyone wants those 50 million ways to be available within their application of how they track it. Now it's more of, hey, why don't you develop your own process in hand first, and we can absorb it within our application. And I think that allows us to not only be a lot more responsive, but a lot more flexible. And I think that's one of the things that has always hindered us in the past, is that inflexibility.
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity then.
Yes, it allows us to have a lot of interesting and new thought processes to be able to bring to the table. It's never a case where a lead as unqualified data turns into a contact, a account, and an opportunity. There could be all sorts of other different things that people are looking for. And now we're moving away from being able to constrain people in that world.
Yeah. Over the last, period of time, let's just call it, we've seen the Microsoft Business Application suite of technologies really go mainstream. $1 billion business. It's really a serious application or set of tools that Microsoft now produce in the software space. The separation of the platform like this and from those apps, do you see this as now really allowing the platform itself to become not just an income stream for Microsoft, but really an income stream for anybody that wants to start building software on this platform?
I would certainly agree to that. I've been using our Power World for a long time now in its project name form, when it was also Sienna, and even before that. One of the things that always appealed to me was the tinker factor, and I've always been one to try to see how I can use certain things. So when I first got access to Project Sienna in the early PowerApp world, I was immediately drawn to it, and I was like, wow, I could do all sorts of interesting stuff with this. And then it was more starting to use my own imagination of what I could do with it. To that time, I can also admit that I didn't really imagine how I could actually embed that within the Dynamics world. But it was a very interesting idea to be able to do that. Where it really started coming and hitting home was Flow. And this actually goes back to my MVP world, which, as you know, there is a direct conduit for our MVPs to be able to engage the product team. One of my challenges has always been, how do I keep responsive with all the information, questions, the things that you as an MVP all look for. And that's where I've been using Flow in the background for at least 2 years now, to be able to understand all the emails that are coming in, dissect them, quantify them, using Flow, and then being able to sort them so that way I can route them to the right people. A single person being able to handle a pipeline of, let's say, 50 to 100 very technical questions a day, and being able to find the right person, that's a challenge. But with Flow, and a lot of people didn't even realize that I was doing this, with Flow, I was able to be extremely responsive. And I think that's where those are the bits and qualities that I think that has been missing in the Dynamics platform. I mean, we've had workflows for a long time, and I know the running store, or at least the running conspiracy theory is, are we eliminating workflow from Dynamics and replacing it with Flow? And I think it's not more replacing it. I think it's more supplementing it. As the word that we want to use today is, you can always bank on the Dynamics customer engagement workflow engine. Now Flow can supplement it with all sorts of interesting things that you can do with it, whether it's structuring it in a way that's only bound to your data, or even being able to use third-party services or machine learning to be able to go out, have the data analyzed and then return it back. That I think is the most exciting thing that you can get out of this new change and new world that we have.
Yeah, I just think that it's great that flow exists outside of what we'd traditionally known, with dynamics, because it allows you to integrate so much more. Where, a lot of the workflow, unless you got into workflow assemblies, was contained within the application in the past. So it really makes it much more enterprise grade.
Absolutely. And even more so that it's a WYSIWYG type editor interface. I mean, if you're expecting code, I know a lot of people shy away from that. I mean, flow is more about that trigger and that action, and then suddenly you start thinking, okay, well, what if I needed to make it do this? And then you can easily do that within the graphic interface.
Yeah. And of course, the logic apps, they're natural extensions. So when you do want to jump down to deep coding or anything like that, and make enterprise kind of extensions to those flows, it's all there. It's already part of what's been thought out by Microsoft.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty of it is once you've reached that citizen developer wall, then you can certainly take that next step and move into more of a developer scenario where you can actually write your own connectors.
Yeah, nice. Let's talk about the Dynamics community for a little bit here. How do the community keep up to date with changes and enhancements now? What are the tools out there that the community should kind of make sure is top of mind, that they're visiting often, that type of thing, from Microsoft's point of view?
That's a very good question. I'm going to start it off with an apology. The apology is that we have not done a very good job in the Dynamics world in the past of fostering the community. With that said, it's not something that we've abandoned the community, but we certainly should have done our part to help a lot of the various people learn all the nuances of what was Dynamics in the past. So with that said, there is a brand new focus about how we can grow the community, empower them, and also upskill them. So one of the things that we've done in the last year, and we've made significant community changes, is rebranding, retooling a lot of our community sites across the entire board. And granted, we are talking about 4 products that have been tied together loosely, but as a community, they've all existed within their 4 corners. So if you were to talk to a Flow community person, they might be aware of PowerApps. More or less, they like to stay in their own world. The same with the Power BI folks. They're extremely passionate about reporting and doing things, and they certainly understand PowerApps and been looking at how to introduce that into the Power BI world. But it's not a case where all of them have figured out a way to start to work together as a community. And I think that's the exciting part for me, is being able to start taking these communities and going, hey, did you know this other person in this community? And maybe we need to get these communities starting to talk together and starting to learn that, hey, you all are connected by this platform now. And there are different ways for us to be able to surface unique ideas across the entire board. So I started this off with more of an apology, but for me, it's an exciting world, because we're kind of moving into this Star Trek scenario where you're going off into this new world, new realm, and I want to make sure that everyone is going to our various community pages, whether it's our Power BI community, our Flow community, our Power Apps community, and our Dynamics community. But we want to get these communities starting to intermingle, so that way they can start learning of all the unique advantages each one brings to the table. So the main, from our side, is our community pages, whether it's community.powerbi.com or community.dynamics.com. Me being the Dynamics person, of course, I'm focused and trying to get the Dynamics community to the table. So that's where my focus has been, is trying to get this education point of, hey, did you know you could do this with Flow and Dynamics? And a lot of people started thinking, oh, well, I didn't realize you could start doing it this way.
Yeah. So listen, what I'll do is I'll place links to all those locations in the show notes. So if you're listening, just check the show notes. We'll make sure those links to those communities are there. Then you can sign up and get involved. What are the other community resources out there, though, that really, people should be looking at?
There's certainly there's a lot of things that I would imagine that people need exposure to. One of the things that tools that I love to promote is one of our MVPs, XRM Toolbox. And I think that has been one of my favorite tools for, it's been almost a decade now that it's been out. But for me, those are the tinker tools that I want the other communities to start discovering of what are the things that we've developed on the community side that really makes that impact. And so for those of you who have never heard of the XRM Toolbox, think of it as your tinker toy that allows you to do things with our Dynamics platform that you wish it could have done in the past. Whether it might be, a plugin that allows you to go in and analyze all the entities that you've created and output a report, or whether it might be a plugin that goes in and allows you to execute a workflow in bulk against a mass set of records. There's all sorts of things that I've discovered that our community, from a developer standpoint, have created and added to the whole XRM Toolbox that has made it personally my favorite thing. So for me, it's about taking those types of garage apps, as I call it, and introducing it to the other communities and going, hey, if you're running into this wall of learning Dynamics, here are some of the things that the IST community has brought to the table. And this intermingling of that community efforts, I think, is the more exciting piece that we're just on the cusp of.
Yeah, nice. So, I see some new communities come up for the people like at CRM UG. Now there's a Flow UG, a PowerApps UG, Power BI UG. Have you been involved in those? What are they about? What can we expect?
To be honest, I haven't, and I'll preface that is I've got a very young, large family that I've been really focused on in the last couple of years. So between work and that I've been somewhat shielded from the user group communities. However, now that I'm starting to come out of the baby world that I've been in, I'm now extremely interested in discovering the other user groups. One of the things I can certainly say is that the naming of it allows this. I certainly understand from a Flow user group community, they go, oh, well, why would I have any interest or any understanding of what the Dynamics communities are doing? And I think from a naming standpoint, that's certainly been there, but I think it's now been our responsibility of being able to show how each world can start living together. And we've probably also made it a little challenging for those user groups of all the various naming changes that we've done over the years as well.
Yeah. So true. I find it interesting that all these individual user groups, and, I've been involved in user groups for some time, heavily, particularly in Australia, and we have the Dynamics 365 user group there running across 6 locations. But now really, do we kick off a Flow user group, a PowerApps user group, a Power BI? Because really all these tools all really still apply to what we're doing in Dynamics or the Power Platform. So, interesting times.
It is, and maybe it's a case where if I was to make yet another name out there, maybe it is time for us to start up a Power Platform user group to get everyone at least centralized and say, here, yes, I do have that Dynamics background, but we're talking about this larger community that we're trying to build, and maybe that's what we should start doing.
Yeah. So, the comment I get from folks in the community is, how can I participate or be involved in the community, across the globe. They're involved in Microsoft business apps, and it could be any one of these. But what type of contributions could they be making to add value to the community that you see?
I would certainly say go to the community sites and look at all the different assets and pieces that we've put together in these community sites. We've done a significant amount of rethinking, as well as moving away from the traditional, hey, we're creating a forum and that's the only thing that we're going to give you, maybe some marketing pages. But what we're starting to do is really starting to create this more of a learning type environment for a community. So you'll still get the forums. You can always ask those type of questions where, hey, I have XYZ and I want to do ABC. Who can give me some recommendations? You could always get that. But where you're starting to see a lot of changes to what we're doing with the community is we're really starting to focus on how do we make people learn at their own pace and be able to kind of bring them into this new world. So what you're starting to see is not only are we starting to do general pieces of information by not only making our release notes for our upcoming release 3 months in advance available, and we're talking 250 pages to 300 pages worth of content with screenshots, write-ups of how the intent is. Yes, it isn't an early bits that you can get to, but it certainly makes a very compelling story for someone to be able to go in there. Yeah, it is 250 pages, 300 pages, but if you're focused in on PowerApps and Flow, you can skip ahead and then learn, oh, I didn't realize that we're going to be making these types of connectors. Maybe I should do a little bit of learning on how to build a connector. And so what we're doing is we're changing how we've done things in the past. As Microsoft and Dynamics, we've not been very good about ensuring that the world knows what's coming. In fact, we've surprised a lot of people by either putting in or taking away features that said we were going to deliver. Now we're being very consistent and methodical on how we do that. And it starts with making sure people understand here's what's coming and here's what you can start doing with it, and then allowing people to start learning at a rapid pace. So from learning about what's coming, you can start learning about what to do, and then you can start seeing webinars. One of the things that I'm pushing heavily myself is I want not only our product team, feature team members to be able to go in and show off what their products will do, but I want our community to start looking at, hey, now that I have this tool or now that I have this capabilities, here's how I can do it in a real world fashion. So I've had Jerry Weinstock and one of our MVPs to come on our YouTube channel and actually show here's how you would have Flow and Dynamics customer engagement work together in hand in a specific scenario. And that allows people to start getting that spark of, oh, wow, I didn't realize I could do this. And just by looking at this, now I can apply this to my own world. I think that to me is the most exciting thing is after 30 minutes of watching something, you can go, oh, I could do this. And that's that moment I want to start creating what I call raving fans. If you're a sports fan, when you become ingrained with your team of nature, whether it's soccer and you're Manchester United or you're a Seattle Seahawks fan, once you become sold in and bought into a product, you go all out. And that's what I want, is I want our community to become such raving fans that they're pushing us to go, hey, we've done this, and we've taken it beyond the theoretical limits, and this is what we can do. And that, to me, I think, makes us kind of take a pause and go, wow, we didn't even think that this is possible.
Yeah, so good, so good. Listen, you've seen a bunch of people involved in the communities over the years and with your role in Microsoft. Well, the people that really stand out for you, and I don't want you to name names, but kind of what type of contributions are you seeing out there that are making a difference, like creating a lot of value for the community?
Well, I definitely mentioned, the XRM toolbox from a community standpoint, and there are definitely other tools out there that I've seen, some very unique and amazing solutions. But I think, to me, the one thing that I've noticed, or at least the thing that really caught my eye in the last year, is a gentleman by the name of Brian Dang. And from the PowerApps world, he started off in the early private preview days of being able to take this, as we call it, the Garage app back then, and being able to create unique ideas with it. So the Brian Dang story, and I'm sure that Mark will post a link to a video that we've recorded on YouTube that explains the story. But the summary is Brian Dang is a teacher, and he loved PowerApps so much and saw so much potential on how to bring PowerApps into a classroom learning scenario that he took a sabbatical, and he wanted to spend all of his efforts for that sabbatical year of learning and being able to create a Power App that empowers teachers to be able to understand and deliver better training and testing to kids, whether it might be kindergartners or even older. And there are definitely other branded applications out there that I can certainly name that do this, but he's played with those. He's a teacher, and he saw certain gaps, and then he saw PowerApps being able to address the gaps using his own knowledge. And I think that was one of the stories that I sit back and I look at it in amazement. You kind of, imagine that teachers saying, I'm going to take a year off to build something that changes the world. But it's been more than that, to be honest. It's to sell the story and close it. Brian has actually joined Microsoft, and he's continued his focus on creating this classroom app, and he's made an amazing progress behind it. But I think that's the piece that we wanted him is, at first we were like, well, we'll create an office for you, and you sit on our floor, and literally we'll pour as much knowledge into you, and let's see what comes out. And I think that was something that's inherently been different over the past 15 years that you've not seen at Microsoft, is us actually finding someone that was so passionate and said, hey, we're not offering you a job right now, but why don't you come and join us, and we'll bounce ideas off you. And then it turned into, oh wow, why didn't you join us? And then you could certainly come back and be a teacher, but now we certainly see the value of, from a community effort to, I think this is a bigger thing that we need to start promoting.
Yeah, phenomenal. Just before we get into some quick fire questions, Purvin, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised as to how we're going to be moving forward in the future. In the past, we have not done a good job of painting a roadmap or painting where we're headed. With James Phillips now at our helm, driving the entire business applications group within Microsoft, you're starting to see a change that I think is almost at a scale that's not been seen at Microsoft before, ever. Yeah. James has gone from a very small focus to a team that rivals all the other applications here at Microsoft. I think we're talking about many thousands, and we're not just talking about our applications anymore. It's about a digital transformation and all the different capabilities that need to come together, and that goes beyond our platform. It goes into the AI world. It goes into all sorts of different areas that we should have brought to the table sooner. And I think we're playing catch up at this stage, and we're going to be coming out aggressively on how we play catch up.
Yeah, awesome. It is exciting times. Let's get on to some quick fire questions. I'm pretty much sure I know the answer to your first one. But what's the one thing that keeps you up at night?
I'm sure that you're expecting me to say the MVPs.
No, I was expecting you to say your kids. That's what I was expecting.
My kids are certainly the ones that keep me up at night. I even pseudo believe that I think they work behind the scenes, and they plot together and saying, okay, I'm going to take the midnight to 2 a.m. slot, and I'm going to and you take the 2 to 4. Oh no, you're not feeling so good. Okay, I'll take the 4 to 6.
Classic. So true. Hey, so what's the one book you'd recommend most to people, and why?
Well, my challenge has been I have not had a chance to read a lot, so when I'm holding a baby, or if I have a baby asleep on me, that's when I can at least maybe grab my phone or my tablet and read something digitally. And I haven't read anything of that's been new lately. The last book I did read a month ago was Mick Foley's Have a Nice Day. And a lot of people would be surprised at me saying, I've been reading a wrestler's book. But I've always found it a very unique industry that has a lot of parallels to real life. Yeah.
Oh, very good. What's hot for you at the moment? Kind of like, what's top of mind for you? It might not be work related, it might not be family related, but kind of what's top of mind?
In terms of what I listen to, so my commute into work, I have probably one of the more amazing commutes that you can have to work. I live out in the valley mountains of the Cascades, and I get to drive in 20 miles down an interstate through forest to our Advanta campus. So I usually get about 30 minutes, maybe if there's traffic, 40 minutes in my truck. So I listen to podcasts a lot. In fact, I've stopped listening to music altogether. And so to kind of go on this wrestling theme, I actually listen to Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, and there are a couple of other wrestlers. The reason why I have an affinity for professional wrestling is I grew up in Atlanta. Atlanta has been a hotbed for wrestling, from whether you see Ric Flair or Dusty Rhodes back in the day. It was very easy for you to run into these people as everyday people. A lot of friends who actually were in that profession. So for me, I look at wrestling as something is beyond entertainment. I see it as a lot of parallels to how they tell a story and convincing you that story is real. And I see a lot of parallels of how to take a lot of that learning of the wrestling world and industry and art form and applying it to my current role right now as a community driver, because it's about trying to paint a picture that people believe. I want to create that raving fan.
That's so cool, because I didn't know that you were into wrestling. It's cool to get to know another side of you. That's awesome.
I credit my grandfather. He, for insane reasons I don't know, but he loved wrestling, and this is British wrestling back in the day. He was from London, or at least grew up in London. So that was, one of the things that I bonded with my grandfather early on. And so it's the early days of the Ric Flairs, the Hacksaw Jim Duggans. So it's always been that part of my life, whether it's friends, family, integration. People laugh at me and say, oh, well, it's fake. And well, I said, well, yeah, don't you? It's on TV. I mean, people get punched in the face, and you would expect there to be black eyes and broken bones. And so why are you questioning if it's real or fake? Because it's that good.
Yeah, it is good. So tell me, what's one productivity tool you use every day?
Flow by far.
I didn't expect you were going to say that. You know what I was expecting, right?
Well, what do you think?
Teams. Really? I was expecting you to pull out Teams.
I am a very big proponent of Teams. I will certainly, I use it every day. But if I was to talk about, if it was my Swiss Army knife, it's Flow. Flow does all sorts of things. And the way that I've always looked at it is I've always wanted a little, person to be able to go in and do the things that I've got multitude of things to do. And Flow has been that, as I call it, the little garage monkey that runs out and does all the things that always makes the mundane things so challenging.
Yeah. What's your best purchase under $100?
The last thing I've purchased under $100.
You can't say a pack of cigarettes.
It can't be a pack of cigarettes. No, it's got to be something good for the community.
No, it can just be anything that's kind of spun your wheels. It doesn't have to be community related.
Well, let's see. I think the last thing that I bought that's under $100 that was awesome is I bought a pair of earbud Bluetooth speakers. So instead of the wireless, instead of the corded ones that you can get, I actually got ones that were under $100 on Amazon. No plug to Amazon, but they've been fantastic. I actually was considering using it, but considering my workspace in my basement, I didn't want it to echo in here. So, but they've been fantastic. It's much more usable. Plus, with screaming kids, it's easy to pop them out into my ears and be able to dull the screaming.
Yeah. I backed a Kickstarter campaign a couple of months ago, about 6 months ago actually, for the same type of things, little earbuds that, wireless, and hopefully they'll arrive shortly, and they will, because I like the idea of no wires,
And I've discovered at night, sometimes I end up watching, catching up on my DVR, but I don't want to wake up the kid that's either fallen asleep on me or whatever the case is. So I pop those in, and, obviously if you have a Roku or a Roku TV, you can pull up the app on your phone and directly listen to the live videos, the audio stream. So that's been my way of purchases. I thought, hey, not only can I be able to answer without wires, but I can actually watch TV and not disturb everyone.
Yeah, so good. Purvin, who do you think I should get on the show, or what guest do you recommend in future, out of the Microsoft team that I should have on the show?
Everyone always seems to pick James. In fact, James appreciates everyone wanting him to be on various podcasts and be in attendance. But I think the person that I would personally recommend is Charles Lamanna. As I call him the kid. He is younger than me. I am an old guy now. But I think he has brought a new blood to our world. And for those of you who don't know on the podcast, when you do look up his name, Charles is over our entire platform. Yes, he is young, but I think that youth plus you'll be amazed by his line of thinking. And so he has been instrumental on how our platform has evolved. And without Charles, I would say that we would be having a different conversation today about how our platform works.
Yeah, great guy. You're the second person to recommend him. James Phillips was the other person that recommended I interview him. And when I interviewed James on the show earlier on, or on the Dynamics 365 Practice Podcast. Hey, Purvin, it's been great to have you on the show. Before you go, if people want to kind of follow you digitally, where do you kind of appear in the online world?
I've actually maintained a very discreet background for all intents and purposes. When the internet came around, I knew that there was a lot of benefits, but I also thought there's a lot of things that people share that maybe shouldn't be shared. So if you did search for me, you probably won't find much about me. But the best and easiest way is through LinkedIn. You can always find me on LinkedIn, and you can certainly engage me through there. The other areas is definitely through the community. You'll start seeing a more concerted effort on my part to become a lot more front and center in the community world. So those would be the first two areas as I start expanding out in different social networks and platforms. I'll certainly share that out, but I've been very deliberate about what you can find and what you can't find about me.
Can I ask you to do me a favor? Producing these podcasts take a lot of effort, and the podcast only can be successful if the community are getting value from it. If you enjoyed the show, can you please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes? If you have any suggestions or topics for the show, or would like to be featured as a guest, please get in touch. If you do want to leave that review, go to iTunes and look up the Business Application Podcast, or go to nz365guy.com/iTunes. I'll really appreciate it.